Okay, so thank you for the invitation. I have 50 minutes to talk to you today, so I will keep exactly to that. And I will actually talk about food retailers that we work with and how they collect data. So what I can tell you, I'm not an expert on packaging. I'm the CEO of the company Sim Supply Chain, but I can tell you how we work with almost all Dutch food retailers, some Scandinavian one and Belgian ones, as well as German and Swiss one, and how to collect data from the supply chain on products. So I'm from a company called Sim, and we map supply chains. So we've been around for 12 and a half years, and our main focus is to find out where products are made, what's in them, or where are they packaging, as well we added, and under what conditions. So we've done this for 12 and a half year, and what we do is we have technology. We use blockchain technology, but also a lot of centralized technology to map supply chains from every actor in the supply chain and collect all specific product data from supply chains. So we work for retailers like Delhaize or Lidl, and then you have to think that we collect data from their products and their supply chains for all of their private label and fresh products. So on average, we talk about 15 to 20,000 products per retailer. So of course, we use technology for that. And we invite suppliers to provide a whole range of information, compliance information, product specification, depending on specific risks. And those risks can be food safety, social compliance, animal welfare, climate impact. So we are used to dealing with a lot of data. Next to the technology, we also deliver the possibility to gather that data for our clients, as well as verify and analyze it. So I usually say we do a lot of the work nobody wants to do. We read a lot of audit reports and certifications, and this is still the most important information out of there. Up until now, most of the data we collected is on products and on locations within the supply chain. But just in the recent, I would say 2-3 years, we have increased the amount of data we collect on packaging. So how do we do it? If you look at an average retailer with, say, 15,000 products, well, we usually start with getting the basics in order, which means that for every contractual supplier, we map exactly per product what are the active production locations for that product. And we also collect all the product specification data. Now, when I say product specification, you have to think of the ingredients, the recipe, the nutritional values, the allergens, the product certifications. We collect that type of data. And you need technology for it, but you also need a connection with the supplier for the supplier to provide that information. And those can be fresh products like meats or eggs or fish, but it can also be non-food products that you buy at an average retailer. Now, that's often the beginning. You need to know where the product comes from, and then you can actually decide what type of data you want to get from the supply chain. Now, if we focus on packaging, we have seen an immense shift in the last, I would say, 2 years. So if we look at the Dutch market, there are commitments that are very important. We have the plastic pact, which all the large retailers and a lot of the large traders actually signed. But we have also a sectoral agreement between all retailers from the Centraal Bureau Levensmiddelen, where they need to collect specific information on packaging. Now, that data was not available in the systems that we have. So we said, okay, we need to translate those covenants and voluntary initiatives and also the legal requirements on packaging into specific data points we need to get from the supply chain on product level. And actually, we found out that that is a lot of data. So there's a lot of individual data points we needed together from the suppliers. And one of the reasons also it was what we found out is that a lot of the data is very deep within the supply chain. So also, if you want to change packaging, you need to know all of the previous steps within the supply chain in order to proactively be able to act. So what type of commitment we saw in the Dutch, we have actually currently in the Dutch market, we have the plastic pact, and there are quite stringent rules on to reach in 2025. For instance, and I'm sure couple of you are familiar with this, 20% less packaging material in total for all of those, say 15,000 or 20,000 products, 100% certification on FFC or PFC, 50% use of rPET, 100% disposable and recyclable logos. These are targets that require a lot of information from the supply chain. So mainly it was also to drive sustainable packaging and reduce plastic. But also we needed to gather that immense amount of data and turn it into management information, because this information is not only important for sustainability managers, retailers, or buyers or quality managers, but this is also data that needs to be shared with NGOs and retailer, as well as the government, for instance, on the sectoral initiative. So we also needed to create from that data specific information from the different stakeholders. And there's a very detailed information we needed to make kind of in a visual way for people to understand where they were in terms of the commitments that they have. One of the things that we ran into is that the reporting was also quite different for the different initiatives. What are we talking about in terms of specific data? So I told you we have very concrete product specification data. And we thought we will start a project on what type of information do we need to collect on packaging for all private label and fresh products of an average retailer in the Netherlands, in Sweden and in Switzerland. So we got a user group of our companies together to decide what type of information we needed to get from every product in their supply chain. What we found out, we thought it was a project for 3 months, but actually it took us 1.5 years because we wanted to integrate both all of the national legislations that were in these European countries, but also follow all of the EU directives on what information needed to be collected, as well as be able to collect and configure these type of data points specifically if some of our companies that we work with committed to some of these initiatives, like a plastic pact or the sectoral initiative. So it took us actually, we thought 3 months, it took us 1.5 years to really define all of the information. And this information is quite so detailed. We collect information on primary, secondary and tertiary packaging. And it's very small here, and this is just to give you an example, but this bar can actually slide so that you have even more information. So there's information on the type of component, if it's a wrap, if it's a bottle, if it's a foil, what type of material layers there are, the weight, the material group, the colors, the certification that might be there, if it's bio-based content, if it's disposal instruction, disposal logo, recyclable logo. All of this information on all of the 3 layers of information we started to collect. And we initially thought after we decided what we wanted to collect, it might take 4 to 6 months to collect it. But it actually was around 1 year to have all of this information on every level of the supply chain for all of the private label and fresh products that we needed to collect. And one of the reasons was that this detailed information, we found out that it is available, but it's often not in one system. So it required a lot of work from suppliers to actually fill this in. Once we had that on each and every product, the first thing we started with the project was to say, okay, we do a kind of a zero where we are now. So we asked all of the suppliers to fill this in. And then after 1 year, we looked at it again, how it was improving. And that's actually when the very interesting part started to happen. We created very specialized dashboards, as you can see here, where over the full range of product groups, our clients had the idea of what was the top 5 best products in terms of reaching the goals that they set on packaging, or which were, for instance, the top 5 suppliers that had improved and decreased the amount of plastic or helped them reach their goals better, and also which were the worst. So there was a very active way in addressing this and knowing which type of supply chains to work with. What we've also tried to do, and this is when we came in, that we had an issue with often with the reporting on the center, you see here, it's a dashboard for packaging. One side there's packaging, there's information on reporting on the plastic pact, and on the other side there is reporting on what was expected from the sectoral initiatives. And there we saw that there's often also a disconnect between the way to report, so that you actually could have a very different view. And there we also needed to then work with the company, say, okay, what's most important? What are the actual goals that the company set, that we can actually show that in the best way. So what were the lessons learned after about a year and a half collecting this information? Well, the product specification for these products that retailers sell, that's already a lot of work for suppliers to fill that information in. It's a detailed list, and often it can take up an hour or an hour and a half, or even more, sometimes a day per specification, to fill everything in, details on the recipe, the nutritional values, and things like that. When we created that packaging information that we needed to know on primary, secondary, and tertiary level in order to make these extensive reports, we found out that you add an additional specification, and that's on packaging. So there was a lot of additional work for the suppliers to provide all that information to their clients. Now, the good thing was that often that information is there, but it's often hidden in different operational systems, or ERP systems, or in emails. So it was never that easy to say, okay, we connect to one system and we collect all that specific packaging information. Now we see in the market that it is changing, that data on packaging on producer level and on trader level is really increasing and is taken very seriously. But it will take another couple of years in order to make this really an easy, shareable, and also very normal way to share all that data right away when a product moves to the supply chain. What we also found out is the aggregation of all of that very detailed data on product level. You need to really aggregate that, either on product group level or on product category level, and share that insights. And also the insights are very different between if you share those insights internally, for instance, with the buying team or the sustainability team, or whether that information is shared externally with third-party stakeholders like NGOs or the government. We also ran into that if you want to report on the initiatives, the reporting indicators are sometimes quite different. And that makes it difficult to really set specific goals if companies want to reach two or more, or have signed up to two or more initiatives. An interesting part, which we also find out, which we didn't know in the beginning, that if you show these overviews per product group, you can also make it a kind of we call it gamification, but what we saw happening between the different buying teams, for instance, the buyers for, say, bread and bakery, or the buyers for beverages and drinks, they could see how they were doing against the different goals. And they can also very much see which supplier or which product was doing well. So in that, there was a kind of a gamification to really see which product group or category would improve the most towards the goals. And by doing that, it also helped for especially the buyers, because they really have the buying power to start also making packaging or changes in packaging part of the discussion. And that actually led often to cooperation with strategic suppliers on reaching those targets. So there were some quite interesting projects that came to that, of different packaging, for instance, for the strawberry boxes with which we could reduce the plastic with 20%, or in the banana to have a banner around them instead of plastic bags, or all of these innovations that I'm sure you're much more familiar with than me on product level, in order to reach those goals. And I think that is a really big change that we've seen. Up until now, a focus has always been on the product innovation, on taste or on the product, but we actually see that now a lot of the innovation projects are also happening in the packaging area. So that was very short and quickly an explanation of what we have been doing for the last, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years, working with our companies on their full product range, working on improving packaging. So thank you for that. I think I'm exactly in 50 minutes. So I will hand over to the next presenter.